LIR.com, 927LIR.com, and YouTube. I am John Kalaboukas, the Bouk, with my good friend Paul Zubulake, Zoobie. So, as we predicted, the Jets start off the year 0-1.
LIR, it's the laying of the egg, and something that our coach, who is now, I believe, what is he, 18-35, I believe, after the defeat, him up at the podium after the game talking about how we're going to get it right and we're going to get better. How about the novel idea of being ready week one and being good week one? How about that idea?
Yeah, the defense they were atrocious. They really were atrocious. It's almost like they didn't practice at all. I mean, the running they were. This was a backup running back. Just ran all over them. Just ran all over them, and that line was getting pummeled the entire game. I think,
John,
wow, if this is any indication of the way they're going to play, top teams, this is going to be a long year.
right, against the top teams. So now, and we'll definitely get into the depth of the game, but just quickly, just the next four games, very winnable games on paper. On paper.
Yes, yes,
They need, obviously, to win 3 out of 4 minimum. That's it. If they're 2-3 after 5 games with that schedule, it's over. So football's a short season, as we know. You don't get a mulligan, right? So you want to compete with the top teams, get ready for the top teams because this is what it's going to take, the maximal effort. But John, one thing we have to point out to the fans, and we really appreciate everybody joining, and hopefully they're enjoying the content. And you get, again, as we always joke, John, every year, the sober analysis of the New York Jets out of us. I had to comment, how can anybody have an opinion on this team when you never saw the team?
correct.
They punted on the preseason completely, and we had absolutely no idea what we would see because everyone's like, oh, the defense is better based on what, losing John Franklin Myers and Bryce Huff. That why are you automatically better? Obviously, the guy that, and we'll get to Hassan Reddick in detail. And as at this point, John, there's no movement yet
Yeah,
this week. So if there's another week and then next week's a short week, he's going to miss the first 3 games of the season. But we'll get to him in a minute. This team is got holes. We talked about it, and nothing changed with this game. Defensively, they are not as good as they were last season, even though everyone's thinking they are. But CJ Mosley is a year older. Quinnen Williams did not show up for this game, and we'll get
yes.
to him in more detail later. Our safeties, we talked about our safeties. This is the best. Chuck Clark hadn't even played in a whole year. They were starting.
Yeah,
Our linebackers are smallish. Our defensive line is small. We do not have a run stuffer. We have a guy that they signed, Lecky Fotu, who, again, we're not going to put in Canton, obviously, and say, oh, the reason the Jets lost and looked terrible is because Lecky Fotu didn't play. So Kinlaw, they got nothing. Will McDonald is an undersized edge rusher who's a specialty guy. He's not an every down player. Jermaine Johnson, he embarrassed himself.
yeah.
He
Yes, he
really
did.
did.
Yes, he
And
did.
he
Yes, he did.
talked before the season about how good he was going to be and how good this defense was going to be. He had a horrible game. He was blown off the line of scrimmage on that crazy play with the reverse where they had them for this huge loss. He missed that tackle and gave up another 8 yards, which gave the MVP of the game besides the backup running back Mason Moody, the kicker, with 6 field goals.
Right.
So this was a butt whipping up front everywhere. The Jets did not show up. And what really burned me, John, and I'm going to bring it up right now, and then we'll get into the game, folks. At the end of the game, I don't know if you stayed to the end and even watched what happened when they
I fell
kind of went.
asleep. I fell asleep by
Okay,
the
you
end of
fell
the game.
asleep. So after the game, I always like to kind of watch the handshakes and see what the reactions are. Because Shanahan was nice to Salah. He could have went for it on 4th down late in the game. He was up by 13 and he went for the field goal to make it 16. He could have easily, they would have definitely gotten the first. He could have put another 7 up there. After the game, Brees Hall is out on the field with Purdy, right? What's his first name? Purdy.
Brock. Brock.
Brock Purdy, right? Brees and Brock, who were roommates in college. And John, I have no problem with an athlete going up to his friend after the game and shaking hands, good game, I'll see you later, type of thing. Those two guys were mucking it up, like smiling, laughing. And I'm not talking
Oh,
about Purdy. He deserves to smile because he won.
oh,
Brees Hall, who I love, who was out there saying he wanted to show how good he was with McCaffrey, who of course didn't play. He had a huge fumble in the game.
yes, he did.
He, he didn't do anything. I know the line, they're going to blame the line. He just did not, in my opinion, play as hard as he should have. And then after the game, he actually made the comment to the media that the team didn't play that hard. Now, he's out there at the end of the game smiling. I'm like, okay, I'm not saying you're supposed to be crying. How in the world are you smiling after that performance? Every Jet player should have just shook hands, walked off the field. I'm sorry, man. So that was the rant of the week.
Well, you are 100% correct. That is one thing that gets me crazy. You just got your butt whipped and badly, and
Badly.
you're busy laughing. Imagine if Bill Parcells was the coach. You think that would have flew with him? No way. Yeah, no. I listen. I agree with you. You shake. You say, listen. I'll see you at after the game. We'll go meet for whatever dinner. But to be laughing after that type of performance, I mean, it's and you're correct in your entire analysis. They were getting pushed around, knocked down. It was as if there was no one in front of the 49ers the whole night. That's the way it
John is
looked to
yeah.
me. There were whole. I mean, you brought McCaffrey. My wife was watching the game with me, and she's, the Jets will have a good chance. McCaffrey's not. She even knows about McCaffrey, and I said no. I said that doesn't mean anything that he's out. I said they're still a very good team, and I brought up to her that this is actually the first time that we're seeing the starters on the field. And she goes, "What do you mean?"
Absolutely.
She,
Yep.
she goes, "What do you mean?" I said, They haven't played the entire preseason. She said, well, how are they supposed to get better? And I'm like, or mesh as a team. And I'm like, you make a very good point. I said, the Kansas City Chiefs have done it.
Of
Other
course,
teams
John.
have done it. The Jets are the only team.
John, we talked about it. They should have been playing these guys. Okay, I
Yeah.
said don't play Quinn and Williams, don't play C.J. Mosley, don't play Sauce Gardner. After this performance, I think everybody should have played. That's the way I feel about it.
Yeah.
And you,
Quinn
you
Williams.
cannot and everybody, John, the Jet fans out there, the young ones especially, who were like waxing poetic about how great this team was going to be, now of course are like, okay, a little stunned that they actually didn't pay attention to what was going on with the roster. The issues with Hassan Reddick and downplaying it like it wasn't a huge deal that he wasn't available. So we talked about him last week, about him gambling and going down the Chris Jones route, where let's see what happens. The team loses and they'll be ready to sign me. But something's different. This is not the Kansas City Chiefs world champions franchise. This is the New York Jets led by Captain Chaos, Woody Johnson. So what the heck are they doing today, Tuesday, September 10th? What are they doing? Are they literally going to just let this go? Because, John, I did not realize this and I had this wrong, and I didn't say the amount of games. I always talk that Reddick has to be in because he needs the year to get
Yes,
free agency. But incredibly, I thought he had to play at least 10 games. It's only 6 games, John. I'm sorry
correct.
about that. I had that
That's
wrong.
correct.
He literally could sit out the season and just play, just show up when they could be done. Who knows what's going to happen? Because still, I mean, if you watch that game and you are honest, you look at it and say, we are in a battle for our lives against Tennessee this week. Tennessee is not a terrible team. They had the Bears beat. All right, their quarterback, he made a horrific mistake where he pitched the ball forward on this. Like he tried, I don't
Yeah,
know if you saw the
I,
Will Levis try to
I
throw it
saw it.
10 yards forward with that. It's like that. You do that when you're like 5 feet away from a guy, not like
It was a
30 feet.
terrible, yeah, it was a
Right.
terrible play.
So they basically blew it with special teams and defensive touchdowns, given up. So they are not a pushover, folks. They are not. And then they come back on the short week against New England when we'll go around the league later. But,
Oh boy,
that's
yeah.
putting some fear into Jet fans where that game is not even automatic on a short week.
It's
So it
crazy.
looks like Hassan Reddick is because wouldn't you think like okay he's at practice tomorrow? I guess technically yeah it's going to have to be tomorrow because they're on a short week. So they're a short week. We're like I said we're doing the video on Tuesday night. He's got to be ready tomorrow. That means we should be hearing by midnight tonight that they have agreed on some sort of short term bridge deal to get him on the field. This team is not good enough, no less Super Bowl. They're not good enough to make the playoffs the way they played. And people,
Yeah,
it's like, and this is not an overreaction, John, because I get it. The next 4 games, they easily could win 3. They could win 4, and everybody be like, oh, you overreacted. I'm talking about being a contender. This is what this conversation is about. This is not
that's
about
correct.
making the playoffs. My
Yeah,
call was 10-7. I stick with that. I'm definitely concerned. There's no doubt about it. But I'm not giving up. I'm not panicking. It's ridiculous. But you have to be blind not to be concerned about that performance. That was a terrible performance, John, on defense. Offensively, still had some issues. And I want to ask you, and I'm going to give my opinion. What did you honestly think of Aaron Rodgers in 2024, the guy who was on the field last night, not the ex MVP?
I thought that he was good. I mean, he still has a lot of zip on his passes. He actually threw some really great passes, really accurate passes. The eye rolling, I don't really care for. I mean, clearly some of his teammates, uh, like Lazard, I, the first pass he threw at him, and I'm like, oh man, don't tell me we're gonna start this again. Stone hands again.
Yeah, all right, that
But
was a big drop, but he came back, John. Luckily for you, because
he
you
came
praised him.
back.
Good
He
for
came
you. Good
back.
for you.
He came back, which is good. But um, mobility is a problem. Obviously we could see it, and he took some hits, which is okay. Get his blood
Hey,
going. But overall, I didn't think he did so poorly. I think he actually did well.
okay.
I liked the fact that he didn't really throw some what do they call it? Dead bird. What is it? Dead birds, dead
A
pigeons.
duck?
What?
A
Dead
duck, a
duck,
duck.
whatever it
Yeah.
is. Type passes.
No, no,
They
he doesn't throw any ducks. No.
no, he has zip. So his arm is still there, but his mobility definitely not. And they seriously have to consider. And again, I don't know if he is overruling Hackett, but if this is Hackett's play calling, they need to fire this man tomorrow. I they were a little bit too predictable for me. You
Well, they
know,
didn't.
they really didn't do much. It wasn't there wasn't too much imagination. I mean, I liked that, the let's say his targets. He clearly, he had Wilson, fine, but once he started hitting him, then what happened to him the rest of the game? I mean, I just think the play calling was not very good,
Well, the
and
thing
and they
is,
didn't make it, and they didn't make adjustments. They didn't make adjustments.
right. I mean, ultimately, the problem with the offense was they just did not have the ball, right? The
Right.
defense just could not get off the field. So that's the problem with evaluating the game. So I agree with you completely. Absolutely good zip on the ball. Of course, he knows what he's doing, but his mobility is going to be an issue. He has some mobility in the pocket. His escape ability is not there at all. And it's
No.
funny, he was on McAfee today and he actually admitted that, going forward each week he's going to get better where you may actually see him scramble a little bit.
Oof.
So
Oof.
the thing is about Rodgers, and I'm glad he's back on McAfee again, is that you will get an honest evaluation of himself. And he does with the eye rolling, and it's frustrating for everybody, but that's just the way he is. I don't
Right.
care. I'll take that any
Right.
day of the week, as opposed to patting guys on the butt all the time and telling you how good they are. But the offense itself, where is the distribution? It is a
Yeah. That's
huge
what.
problem.
Right. That's what I
Look at
was
the
saying.
statistics, John. Lazard and Wilson are the only receivers who caught a ball.
Right.
They didn't use Braylon Allen.
Yep.
I mean, you got to be kidding me. You drafted this kid. He looks like he has talent. How can you not use him? That was ridiculous. On short yardage, perfect situations.
That's
Why
right.
isn't he in there in short yardage to complement Brees Hall? Brees Hall had over 20 touches. That's what you want, between 20 and 25. Now, again, it's hard to evaluate the game because they didn't have the ball. But out of those, in the amount of plays that they had, Allen's got to get some touches in there, and Hall's going to have to get a few less out of those the amount of snaps. Because if you're in the 40s for snaps, I mean, you're in a terrible situation. But he still needs to get action, especially
Right.
on short yardage, man. It's a no brainer. You got to use your other players. The tight ends were non-existent. I mean, the O line did okay. They held in there. They gave up some pressure, but again, it's so hard to evaluate. So the offense, I give like an incomplete almost, and the
Right.
defense is a solid F. I mean, that is a
Yeah.
F.
Well, and the other thing is that they're making such a big deal of when Rogers and Hackett were sitting next to each other, and Hackett was talking, and Rogers was just looking in another direction. I said, "What was
Right.
that? For 1 second, they caught the
Yeah.
cameras. I mean,
Yeah, and
you
they
didn't know
edited
what
it.
happened. They're making that he has such disrespect for Hackett. He's actually the reason why Hackett is coaching on the Jets. I
That's
mean,
such a non-story.
they
Yeah, he
just make
addressed
up
that.
such stories. They just make
He
up such stories.
he addressed that, John. I mean, it's yeah, that Diana Rossini again the week before the game coming out
Oh,
with some of
was
the
that her
negative.
again? Oh God, here we
John, it's
go.
like every time, oh, it's a hatchet job, and there was the unnamed GMs, and the Jets are in chaos. Like this tip, it's like, it's like you don't get any respect when you do stuff that as a reporter. Obviously, she doesn't care. A
Yeah.
lot of these reporters don't care what you and I think on the Bouk and Zoobie show. So,
Well,
uh,
Rogers had a nice message for the Jet fans. I loved it when he ripped the Jet fans. He goes, "If we were to win this game, we're going to the Super Bowl. If we lost it, it's the same old Jets." He goes, "Listen, either you come for the ride or don't come at all." So I'm
right.
paraphrasing him, which
No, I know what you're saying, but John, for guys like me and you who've been fans for literally 50 years,
yeah,
and
we're
he's
not
here for
jumping off the
50,
wagon no matter
right,
what.
right, of course not. But
They'll drag
he's
us through
kind
the
of
mud as much as possible.
right. But if he watched what I just said, he would call me one of those fans. And it's like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it from a guy who's been here for 15 minutes. And I'm
Yeah,
not knocking him. I like him. I have no, like I said, they're getting incomplete grade because their defense couldn't get them back on the field.
yeah,
But there is issues. His mobility is an issue. Again, you have to be blind. And the other parts on the offense, Mike Williams. I know he's coming off of ACL. Oh, we're gonna keep him on a pitch count. He was like a decoy. I mean, he's on the
Yeah,
field. Try to get him the ball, get him in action. Nothing. I already
yeah,
mentioned Allen. And then Malachi Corley, their third
right.
rounder. They make this big deal. They trade up for him. He's like the yak god. He got one snap, John. One. So
Yeah,
that's like a Mecole Hardman all over again type of vibe. Not to say
yeah,
that obviously it's different because he's a rookie, but they're praising him like he's going to be this huge weapon. He's got to play over Xavier Gibson. Are you kidding me?
yeah.
Xavier
I
Gibson
agree.
is a punt returner. That's what he is. And he's a kick returner. He's a gimmick player. Corley has got to be on the field. And Lazard is Lazard. He had a bad drop, and he did make those other plays. But let's face it, the second touchdown was in complete garbage time. And that
Yeah,
was actually funny. I was like, they pulled Rodgers. I'm like, doesn't he need the reps? What do you think about that? I mean,
right.
I know it is eight.
Yeah,
I get it, but that was a little weird, right?
yeah.
Get
I
Taylor some
disagree with
work.
that,
What is
but
this?
I but I
Is it
want to mention.
preseason?
I wanted to mention that you made a great observation about Quinton Williams. Quinton Williams looked fat and slow to me.
he,
He
he
he he really had a really bad game.
He made
He
a
he,
couple of plays. I know he's
he
the
just
anchor, John, and you know how I love snap counts. So I'm glad you
yeah.
brought Quinnen back up. How many? What's the percentage, John? You don't know, right? You didn't check. So what do you
Nope.
think he played on defense out of the 8 million snaps they had on defense? How? What
50
percentage?
50%.
No, he's not that bad. 67.
Okay.
So
Two
he's
thirds.
got to be out there in the mid 70s with this squad, especially. John, that's every third play he's off the field. That
Yeah.
cannot happen. That cannot happen. They were playing that kid, Jalen Holmes. I mean, I know he made a play. That 99% of the Jet fan base didn't even know who this kid was. He played 22 snaps. So it's like they're weak at D tackle.
And what was
Solomon
the deal
Thomas
with
and Kinlaw, nothing out of those guys.
and
Nothing.
what was the deal with Sauce being off? I mean, I'm assuming he was injured. Was he injured?
He definitely got his bell rung. I
Right.
thought that they might have had him, it was a concussion type of thing and they were lying, but they brought him back in on the same drive. Very weird. He missed 9 snaps in total. Very strange. And then the coach Sala, and again with the garbage. That's what's so funny about Rodgers talking about the fans. How about your coach with
Uh,
this same? He was what was he exactly what he said when they mentioned about Sauce? He was getting his breath, like yeah, he lost his breath or something. Or he was shortness of breath, right? It's like just say he got his bell rung and we held him out for a few plays. Like,
Paul
why can't Salah handle these type of
Paul
questions? I know. Here it comes.
he will
Yeah.
be fired at the end of the year. You and I have called this the past several seasons. The man must be fired. I don't even care if they make the playoffs with him. He has to, he's just a subpar coach. We we,
it's
we
just
we don't have the best. Look at all these other coaches that I mean, you can't even compare.
oh my god.
Like I said, I like the guy. Personally, I like him. He's a good human being, good family man, but he's a subpar coach. Why can't we get a top-notch coach one time? One time in the past what, decade, 2 decades?
Three.
Come on, man. It's just disheartening when you know that your coach is not up to par with the rest. I mean, even compared to the new coaches, he's not even up to par with them. You start comparing him to Tomlin and all the rest of these guys, they're outmaneuvering him all day long. All day long.
No, we're. I mean, you almost feel like you're down a touchdown when you step on the field when you're going up against a guy like Shanahan. You're going
Yeah.
against Tomlin. Now that, like I said, the concern is it's like okay, we're going on the field against two rookie coaches the next 2 weeks with Tennessee and New England, but they may be good coaches, right? Callahan and then Mayo. they might end up being really good coaches. And
Yeah,
give credit to the Patriots for their big win. Give
yeah, that was
credit.
a
They
big
beat the
win.
Bengals. That was a huge win for them.
Yeah,
John, this is something, and it's so funny to look, because we were joking on Sunday where our, Father K, and Father K, thank you again for being on the show last week. His Dolphins, John, never ever should have won that game. Um, Travis Etienne going in when they're up 10, first and goal, and he's rambling to the end zone. Javon Holland, who got a mention on last week Bouk's and Zuby show, Bouk and Zoobie show, punches the ball out instead of being first and goal at the 1 to go up 17. Miami ball after they recover in the end zone. The Jags never had a chance after that. They did a absurd fourth down attempt inside their own 30
yeah,
with winning the game by 3, going for it on their own 28. And Coach Peterson, you still got to go 70 yards, even if you get the first down. What the heck was that? Incredibly, John, Miami's kicker, Sanders, who's like basically money, he duck hooked it
yeah.
and missed that field goal, and they still lost, and they still beat them. So Miami pulls it off. Buffalo down 2 TDs. Not that I ever thought they were going to lose that game with the Cardinals, especially as their opponent. They gave up a special teams touchdown, right, John? I think Buffalo
Yeah.
was the only team that did that. It was a touchback festival. So the teams, there were a few decent returns. So we go from thinking Buffalo and Miami could lose in the 1 o'clock hour to Tuesday evening, 3 teams at 1-0 in the AFC East and 1 team at 0-1 in the AFC East, the New York Jets.
And speaking of the Dolphins, did you see what was going on with Tyreek Hill? Did you see that video? It
I
was,
have, yeah,
it just got out of hand so quickly.
I,
Man,
I figured,
the Miami police were rough, very
John,
rough.
I was thinking about when I was watching that is that why didn't we get the video of the Scotty Scheffler one? Because with that situation where he also got put in handcuffs. Now, to defend the police a little bit on this, I mean, he was beyond obnoxious, John. And when you get pulled over for something, you can't kind of act that way. Obviously, it should have never escalated. The police probably should have just calmed everything down and not make a big deal about it. But he could have obviously acted a little
No,
better
of
too.
course, you listen to instructions. The guy tells you to put your window down, you put it down, which he
Yeah,
did. He gave him his license, but then he
he
put it
put
back
it
up, and
back
the guy
up,
said,
put it back
put it
down.
back down. I mean, you and I would follow those instructions. I mean,
Right.
why shouldn't he? Just
He's
follow
got
the
tinted
instruction. I mean,
windows,
all
John.
of these, anytime we see something like that, you're basically yelling out to the TV, would you just follow their instructions?
Of
And you
course.
wouldn't have this. But
Right. He he
I
he.
just thought they treated him a little roughly once they got him out of the car. I'm like, come on,
No,
man.
that was the ridiculous
I
part.
said, this is a traffic stop. I mean, come
That
on.
was the ridiculous part. That was that's Hill was completely in the wrong up to that point when they pulled him out
Correct.
of the car, and
That's
then it
correct.
goes the other way. But the modern athlete thinks that they're above everybody and that they don't have to pay attention, and so it's just a stupid
And
incident.
what
But
was the
let's
first
face it.
thing? What was the
Go.
first thing that he said out of his mouth to one of his teammates that happened to be there? Call Drew. Call Drew.
Yeah, yeah.
He kept
His
saying,
agent,
I'm like, all right, yeah, that's his agent. Call
Drew
Drew.
Rosenhaus. Well, because Drew knows how to get his players out of predicaments. So that's a lose lose for everybody.
Yeah.
Bad job by everybody. Why it's just the whole thing is again a waste of people's time. But then the guy goes out and gets like an 80-yard touchdown.
Right.
So I mean, and let's face it, Tariq Hill has a lot of baggage in his life, so it's hard to kind of give him the benefit of the doubt, John. So, but it doesn't matter to him ultimately. He's still going to perform. It's not like he was too worried about it once he got out of the mess. I think he realized he put himself in a mess because one of his
Yes.
teammates showed up and he was like kind of telling him stay, 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 and the teammate was like, no man, I'm out of here because I'm gonna end up getting involved in this. So he got out of there. So it's just like you kind of dig your own hole there. And
Yeah.
but you would think, John, you would say, oh, lesson learned. Tariq
No.
Hill is no lesson learned.
No. Well, one player that you've been mentioning the past couple of weeks, Ayuk. Did you read about what happened with him before he finally agreed to that contract?
I
He
don't know
was
the
given
details. Tell me.
he was given there was a trade worked out with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they basically went to him. He happened to go into the headquarters and said to I forgot who he was speaking to, said, "Listen, I want to stay here." So I believe it was the coach or someone ran up to the GM's box where they were finalizing the deal to the Steelers, and they decided to bring him up to their suite, and they said to him, either you sign this contract with whatever we offered you, or you're being traded to the Steelers. And he signed right on the spot.
Well, sometimes you have to do that because the Steelers, I don't know, they were going to make a trade like that and not have him under contract because then he would have been a pure rental. That's an interesting story. I don't know,
Yeah,
John, the way these GMs operate, we're seeing the Joe Douglas mismanagement on the Hassan Reddick situation, and you're just thinking to yourself, how does this happen to our franchise? I mean, it's probably worth because we're jumping around, we're going around the NFL a little bit, and that's my
right.
fault. But I mean, I don't know. I always, like I said, with the snap counts, I think I've kind of gone through everything. I'm just looking down at my numbers here. Michael Carter got an injury. That's not good news.
Yeah.
But it was just such a pitiful performance. You could just hope that it's an aberration on D. They come out flying next week. They take it to the Tennessee Titans and they get a win on the road. And that's what's got to happen.
Well, I could give you a performance that was even more putrid than the Jets. Just look at the
Oh,
Giants.
well, of course. That's where we were headed to the other side of
Oh,
the state of New Jersey.
oh, that was a really awful performance. And Jones, man, you talk about someone that looked lost. Wow, that was awful to watch that game. Really awful.
Well, I'm happy to report, John, that I have actually got the red zone in 2024. I did after boycotting the last couple of seasons. I did go back, and I'm telling you, John. And one of the reasons I went back because the Jets have so many non-Sunday games that I knew I'd get a lot of this giant game or nothing. So you're a big baseball guy because you could just maybe throw the Mets on, but to have to sit through that. I did watch a decent amount of it because I want to be able to talk about it on this show. And I definitely wanted to see Sam Darnold play.
Right.
So talk
Darnold
about yeah,
Darnold looked great. And I
right,
kept
but
saying to my wife that the Jets never gave him a chance. They really didn't give him a chance.
well, he was again in a tough situation, and we don't want to go back there, John, because we had Zach
Yeah,
Wilson in the middle. So let's please don't
yeah.
go back there. I'm happy to see because I always liked Darnold. I liked them when they
Me
picked
too.
him, and
Me too.
And it's a shame that they can't, the Jets will refuse to develop players. They just want to see if it's not instant gratification and he's gone. So good for him. Let's see if he can sustain it because he's going to be a free agent, John, because J.J. McCarthy is going to be the quarterback of the future there in Minnesota, unless
He's
he
only
has a great season.
27. He's only
Yeah, he's young.
27 years old. Like
So he can go out, yeah,
yeah.
go out and have a great season and get paid. So good for him. But I mean, talk about defensive performance, offensively defensive. It was so offensive that performance by the defense. What a terrible job. They made Sam Darnold look like a MVP,
Yeah.
and from Thibodeau and Brian Burns, nothing, L0 out of these guys. Thibodeau didn't even get on the stat sheet. And then, of course, he has an issue with the reporters after the game. So that was his rep. He has a ton of talent, but in between the ears, these guys sometimes they just don't show up, and they just don't want to hear it. So I think, John, this year, I mean, Joe Shane's he's fine. I think Brian Daboll is almost in the same category as Salah. Is he just an offensive coordinator? because he made a bizarre decision this year to call the plays. I don't know
Yes.
why he did that. He has a good offensive coordinator that supposedly Mike Kafka, who everybody loves as a potential head coach. I don't know why he did that. He took too much on his plate. There is something wrong with that team, and obviously they have a problem at quarterback. But the guy's coming off of an injury, his first game back, and I feel a little bad for him, honestly, because it's the same thing with Zach Wilson. You could say the same thing about both those guys, John. It wasn't their fault they got drafted so high because
Yeah.
both of those guys were way overdrafted. And if they got drafted where they should have been drafted, probably the second round, ultimately, for some, you could argue not getting drafted in Zach Wilson's case, but they should have not been first round. There's no less than the top 10 or top, well, I guess Jones was 6. I can't remember exactly. So it's not their fault that they were like this expectation is thrown on them. And he got lucky. He had his best year when he was a free agent. So
Yeah.
you're going to begrudge the guy for getting paid? And now the fans are jeering him and just like they're waiting for the game. And like, yeah. And it's like, Rodgers thinks the Jet fans, I mean, the Giants have had success. And look what they're doing to this guy. I mean, the
Yeah.
Giants have some problems. Their O line stinks still. We talked about that. We didn't think they would be as bad as imagined. So it does come down to the performance of the field. So, I mean, you can't
Well,
get any worse than the two performances, right, John, for the locals. I mean, it
yeah.
really was,
Well, Lawrence
scary.
Taylor,
I
uh, I don't know if you read what
didn't
he
hear
said.
it.
He was like a guest with Carl Banks, and he said to Carl Banks because they were both really, really disgusted with the performance. And Lawrence Taylor says, "Listen, we could get 22 of our guys from our team and go on the field right now and play better than these guys." They were so disgusted with the performance, and like you said with Thibodeau, guy, I never forget when he was drafted and you saw him walking out with all this gold and flashy stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you better perform in New York, my friend, because all that glitter is going to go bye-bye very quickly. And he just thought so highly of himself. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
no, I know. It's a
and they say,
tough
why?
situation.
They would say, why didn't the Jets take him? I'm like, I don't want a guy like that. You better
Well,
wake
now he
up.
was on the board. Yeah, they took Sauce Gardner. So that's worked out.
Yeah.
Outside of the bizarre situation with Sauce yesterday. So I don't really have much more on the Giants. I mean, they're and to see Saquon Barkley, not that anybody saw it
Oh,
on Friday, but to get 3 touchdowns, talk about a
Mara
kick in the
was right.
crotch.
Mara was right. He said he wasn't going to be able to sleep. He definitely had a sleepless night with the Eagles, and you could
He didn't.
see in when they were speaking that he really was hoping. And he's the owner. He should have said, "I want Barkley to stay." That's all he had to say. But he wanted to let his guy do his work, and this I'm like,
Well, the
listen,
John,
his instincts might have been correct.
the thing is, he's co-owner. He's not 100%.
No,
So it's
I
a little
know, but
different with
still.
Captain Chaos. No, but it is a factor where he doesn't have full say, John Mara. He doesn't. It's a cut.
No, I know.
You know,
I know.
the Tishes have a say, and they probably said when they hired him, he's going to make the decisions. The ownership is not making the decisions. He's making it because there's two of us and there's one of him, and they roll the dice. I think Joe Shea knows what he's doing. He got in a terrible situation where he re-signed Jones because he almost had to. Now he's in big trouble.
Yeah.
I don't know, John. I mean, it definitely. I don't want to get crazy because overreaction week
Yeah,
one can
no.
burn you
It's
every
one game.
time.
It's one
Yeah.
game. It's fine. We kind of expected the loss. That's okay. The one I wanted to ask you, what was your opinion on that Dak Prescott signing? I mean, how much he got a contract of 4 years, $240 million with 230, I think it was 230 million guaranteed and what, like an $80 million signing bonus? Are we talking about the same player here? What was Jerry Jones thinking about? I mean, what's your opinion on it? I think it's an absurd contract for Prescott.
Well, it is. It's kind of funny for the guys who have signed these huge deals in the last, say 6 months, right? You got Prescott, Trevor Lawrence, who loses again. Jordan Love gets injured. And the
Yeah.
one from a couple years ago now who signed the ridiculous contract, Deshaun Watson,
Yeah.
now with more off the field issues where someone is now suing him for
Yeah.
his issues. That, John, is making everybody look good. So Prescott is a good player. He's a good guy. He's a good leader, and his timing was right. And it's in this bizarre rotation, John, where they just keep on paying the last guy the most money. And Patrick Mahomes just, I mean, I don't know how he deals with it. I really don't.
If Prescott's worth 60 million a year, then Mahomes is worth 80 to 100 million a year. I mean, come on.
Way
Wow.
over that. I mean, you're right.
Wow.
So, and
Wow.
that, and we shouldn't forget about the Thursday night as we'll get off the Giants. They're not worth talking about. Let's face it. We'll talk about them next week. They got the Commanders. They've got to win that game. The
They
Jets
definitely
and the
have.
Giants, they were in must wins in week 2. It's not hyperbole. It's reality.
Yeah.
But we definitely have to talk about Thursday's game, Kansas City, Baltimore. The best, it was probably the best game of the week, right? The first one. What a
Yeah.
game.
And
What a game.
right. I mean, yeah, it was a great game in
Crazy
Baltimore.
finish.
Phew.
Wow. By an inch. By a literally and it was so funny because someone I don't know who it was. They said you should have wore white shoes because he wore dark shoes. I'm telling you, John, if he wore white shoes, they might have won that game.
Yeah. But it's Jackson just not coming through at the end again.
I know, but that was a great.
I
He
mean, I
did
put
come
them in the
through, but he didn't.
AFC. I put them in the in the Super Bowl this year, and I'm like, oh, come on, can you ever get over the hump? Let's
Well,
see what
but John,
happens with him. It's one
you got
game.
it
It's one
right,
game.
right. But if you really look at it, I mean, he is good, and
No,
I
he's
know what you're
excellent.
saying. And they were there. He would have went for 2. It would have been so interesting because that debate would have gone forever. That's the only time it makes sense for me when there's no time on the clock. So my
Right,
big beef with the 2 at the end of the game is when there's like 30 or 40 seconds left. It's like the other team can still beat you with the field goal. So if you
right.
go for 2 and miss it, they're going to knee it out and the game's over. Um, and that's another thing we got to get to around the league. It just popped into my head. The onside kick rule, which I've had completely wrong. And it's like so funny how nobody was talking about the kickoff rules and what the deal was because I thought they were going to put in the 4th and 15 play. So the actual rule is you have to tell the other team that you're going to do the onside kick, and then they line up in the old traditional way of doing it, and you can't run with the ball. So um, this is probably getting way too deep into this, but they changed the rules on the kickoff a few years ago, right? Maybe it's 4 or 5 now, got it, right? Where you can't run with the kicker. So you had to stay put, and then when they kicked it, then you could run,
Right.
right? They moved it to the
Correct.
35, it was touchback city, right? So the problem with when you can't run with the kicker, it eliminates the onside kick pretty much
Yeah.
because if you
Yeah.
can't move, you kick the ball 9 out of 10 times they were recovering the onside
Sure.
unless
Sure.
they did like this whirly bird kick, right? I think Zerline did it right where the Jets somehow got one. And anyway, so that's the rule, folks. And I apologize because I would have liked the fourth
You
and
have to
15.
tell you. So wait a minute.
Yeah,
So for something that's supposed to be a trick play, you have to tell the other team that you're going to do an onside kick.
right. So in other words, the trick play is over. This is at the
That's
end of the game when you have
wow.
to try to get the ball back. You have to
Wow.
say, we want to do the onside. They go back to this old rule. They can't run. So the NFL has completely
Uh,
botched the dynamic kickoff. Yeah, very dynamic, guys. Why weren't they watching the Bouk and Zoobie show, John? When I said the 40, you said the 35. I said the 35 was okay. I preferred the 40 because you make it punitive for kicking in the end zone. We would have had dynamic kickoff returns like crazy at the 40, even the 35. They did it at the 30. What did you get this weekend, John?
yeah.
Touchback City. So
Yep.
anyway, so that's why you watch the Book and Zuby show on YouTube, right, John? Search. Bouk and Zoobie, Zoobie. If you're watching us already, you see the names on the screen. We really appreciate it. Please subscribe so you get the automated download and like the episodes. And then we also got some comments this week, right, John? We did get some. Somebody made some comments, puts their picks out there, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, and they were actually pretty detailed comments, which they put their own predictions, which we welcome. We'd love to see your
Yeah,
predictions.
we'll give everybody.
Even
You could actually still do it.
week
You
to
could do.
week.
We'll give you a weekend, John. You could do it anyway.
Right.
And also, I have to mention Spotify.com. Same thing. Subscribe, favorite the episodes. And, of course, the world famous LIR.com, 927 LIR.com, where they're still spinning the tunes from the 80s, John, when we were young men. So, and maybe that was the last time we were happy sports fans because, man, has it been rough.
It's
It
been a
has
long time.
been rough. We are, we're trying to hang in there, folks. We appreciate people watching. We tell it like it is. We tell how we feel. I think our track record's pretty good. If you're special with our teams, and we're not going to talk any winter sports today because it's all about the NFL now. And of course, we'll get to the other sports soon because there's a lot of excitement in that other sport, John. But before
Oh,
we
yeah.
get there, I want to make sure that if you had any thoughts from the opening weekend regarding the NFL, anything else pop into your head?
No, the teams that I thought would win actually won. I mean, the Lions, which that was a
That was a
pretty
good game.
that was a very good game. No, there was a lot of competitive games,
Yep.
and that's what you'd like to see. You don't want to see blowouts. I thought overall for the NFL was a good week for them. It was a good
Yeah, it
week.
was. And I mean, when it comes to teams that like popped out and impressed you right before, obviously Kansas City and Baltimore, no doubt. Obviously San Francisco, uh, Detroit, and the Rams, they look pretty good, right?
Yes,
Puka
they did.
Nacua took an injury though, unfortunately for the Rams. He's going to be out. I don't think there were any season enders. There probably were. Our old friend Bryce Hall from the Jets, he's on Tampa now. Backup corner is actually out for the season, but he's a backup. So yeah, again, the disappoint, Jordan Love getting hurt. That was again on the Friday night game.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I don't know how many people watch. Did you check the ratings out? I'm putting you on the spot. Did you see anything on the
I
ratings
I
at all?
did no, I didn't see anything on the ratings this week.
Yeah,
No.
nobody's talking about it, so I don't know what that really means because maybe people forgot because there was a Friday night game in Brazil on Peacock. I did see a lot of complaints about the actual feed from that network. The officiating, I guess, the absurdity with the illegal procedure calls or illegal formation, I should say, basically on the Ravens' Ronnie Stanley on Thursday night where they were flagging the poor guy left and right. And then I'm watching the rest of the games. I'm like, they're not really calling this consistently. Um, and then, of course, yeah, we got to mention it, John. The expedited replay reared its
Oh,
ugly head in the
oh,
Jet game, where Garrett Wilson. I don't know how in the world he doesn't drag his foot there, but that's another story. The referees get overruled by the eye in the sky. What happened to the challenge? So when is a call challengeable now? Because if the eye in the sky is making the overturn, isn't the team on the other side of the field that the call goes against? Aren't they supposed to throw the red flag, John? I don't understand. Like,
yeah,
why would you throw the red flag at all anymore? Because if they didn't already expeditely replay it, that means the call was right on the field. So
right,
why would you
right,
throw the red
right.
flag?
Yeah, the NFL's done just so many different changes, and not necessarily for the better. You're right. A lot of people are confused. I even
Right.
think that some of the announcers are confused, even on the kickoff. They're trying to explain it, and then they have to actually shade the spot where it has to land, and then you have to wait for the guys to actually run. I, I,
Right. Well, John,
it's
and another thing I learned about the kickoff this week was that when it goes, if you kick it on the ground and it hits in the landing zone, which is from the goal line to the 20, and rolls in as a touchback, and they don't return it, you get it at the 20. You get it at the 20. So it's a touchback that is at the 20 instead of the 30 if it hits on the field and rolls into the end zone.
Wow, wow.
So
You
there you
talk
go,
about
John. Only this is
confusion.
the most popular sport on earth, and the people who run the league still are, there's no transparency about what's going on. And then the announcers themselves, why aren't they complaining and saying, wait a second, why is that play reviewed upstairs and then another one may not be where I have to throw the challenge flag? Where are the freaking announcers talking about this stuff, John? I mean, we could get into that, I guess, because Tom Brady's premiere was this week, which I could care less about. But can't some of these guys who were doing these games, can't they question this stuff?
Uh, who knows? It's the buddy club where they're not supposed to bite the hand that feeds them. Who knows with
Right.
these
I
guys?
think you're right. Because why aren't they getting? I mean, just this whole thing with the replay from upstairs. What is the rule? Then take the red flag out of the game. You either replay it up in the sky every play or not. It's unbelievable. There was multiple calls this week that were changed.
It's
And there was
ridiculous.
one that there was a mistake, like literally a blatant mistake by the officials. And he came over the thing and basically said, I don't know if they spotted it wrong or whatever. And he's like, oh, we've been alerted that we made a mistake, basically, is what he said. I don't remember exactly what game it was because
At
I'm watching
least,
the red zone.
at
I'm
least
watching
he's
too many
on. At
games.
least he's honest. At least he's honest.
So,
Wow.
NFL, get it together. Come on. You got the greatest sport on earth. Just can you make it transparent on what the rules are?
Wow. Wow.
All right, John. I'm yelling. I gotta shut up. Zuby's gotta shut up, and He's gonna have to let it. This is unbelievable what's happening. So this is great, John, because as I always joke about this segment of our show, you don't have to watch baseball, folks, because you got baseball with Bouk.
Yes, and the last time we spoke about baseball was 2 weeks ago. And what has happened? The New York Mets have won 10 out of 11 games to actually be in control now of their own destiny in the wild card. They are one game up on the Braves.
How many games left?
They're right now they're let's see, we add in 18 games.
18 left, folks. Okay, go. Sorry to
18.
interrupt.
So they have two more with Toronto. But what's the killer in their schedule now? The Washington, they have Toronto for 2. They have the Phillies this weekend in Philadelphia. Then they have 3 with Washington. But if you want to look at it overall, the last 13 out of 16 games that they're going to have, 7 are with the Phillies, 3 are with the Braves, and 3 are with the Brewers. So you have 13 games against the top teams, basically. Not easy. It's not going to be easy for them. Not going to be easy. But listen, they're a fun team to watch. They could give you heart attacks. The starting pitching has been great all year. I mean, Manaya, Severino, even Quintana has been pitching well.
Yes.
Imagine if we get Senga in time for the playoffs. I mean, McGill pitched a fantastic game last night. Fantastic game. Overall, listen, fun team to watch. Really fun team to watch. I mean, Lindor is really cooling off very quickly, but listen, he couldn't
It's gonna
keep up
happen.
that pace. Yeah, he couldn't. Nemo has been, I don't know, since the All-Star break is just ice cold, just ice cold. Even Big Pete. You think about the way they're winning. The offense is not really doing well, and not that well.
Right.
So, so we'll see. Listen, I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs. I said it 2 weeks ago. I hope I'm wrong, but it's the pitching has been carrying them 100%. And Mendoza's been doing pretty well managing, but he really muffed up a couple of games ago where he put in Diaz in the ninth inning of a 4-0 game. And I'm saying, why is he using him at all in this game? There's no reason. Save him for a close game. And what happens? The following game was a tie score. That would have been a perfect time to use Diaz, but because he had used him in the 4-0 game, they had Matone come in and they ended up losing that game. They cannot afford to lose games. I mean, they should not have lost to the Reds, even though the Reds did play the Mets tough over the weekend. They really did. So, also a couple of weeks ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago, you had asked me, have any teams passed the Mets with the amount of pitchers? Yes, we have actually two winners. Los Angeles Angels, 39 pitchers. Mets are still the same.
It's still
The
37.
Marlins, yeah, the Marlins,
Okay.
43 pitchers. 43.
This is Major League. This is Major League Baseball. We're talking without the crazy call-ups in September, right? So we have to point that out. Because some old timers supposed to be like, oh, they just added all these guys in September. No, you can't. They only add a few now.
43. That's insane. That's insane. All right.
I love it.
I'm gonna ask your opinion on the White Sox again.
I was wrong. I think I was saying they weren't going to break it, but what's the situation? I don't even know what's going on.
So they have 17 games to go. 33 wins, 112 losses. Will they break the Mets record?
But
17 to go.
What was the actual number though? Because we were talking about that. They didn't play 162 back.
They played 160 games.
And how many? And they lost 120. Was it
120? They were 40 and 120.
So
the White Sox are now 33 and 112 with 17 to go. They actually won a game the other day.
Wow. I mean, based on the percentages, it says they're going to break the record. But why do I think they're going to tie the record? But it's going to be impossible to tie because it's 160 versus 62. So, yeah, John. If you just go based on pure percentages, yeah, the White Sox could take the Mets out. And I don't know what Met fan wants that position. I'll be thrilled to get out of that.
Oh, are you kidding me?
Maybe who wants that? The biggest loser of all time. I mean, who cares? So yeah, let's. That's
the
real.
Tigers. Well, the Tigers, if you remember, I actually had to look up the year. In 2003, had 119 losses. They ended up with 119 losses. In order for them not to tie the record with the Mets, you know what they ended up doing? They ended up winning 5 out of their last 6 games. People don't remember that.
Yeah, right.
Out of their last 6 games, they won 5 to avoid getting 120 losses. So
John, it's funny because I wanted to definitely bring this up because when you start talking about who the Mets have to play, I'm like, well, who do the Braves have to play? Because the Mets have a very tough schedule. So yeah. I'm happily pulling this up, and I see that they actually have a 4-game series with the Dodgers coming up.
Yes, they do.
But they do play the Reds, the Marlins, and the Royals. Oh, how do you like that? They're ending the season against the American League. Oh my God, help me with this. They got it, John.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
Come on, man. They can't.
But the one team that I think that the Mets will overtake, because they're only 1 game behind them now, are the Diamondbacks. Everyone keeps saying, "Oh, the Diamondbacks, they're a good team." The Mets are a better team than the Diamondbacks. Okay. And what I like with the Diamondbacks schedule is they have a pretty tough schedule. Okay. And the last 3 games of the season, they're playing the San Diego Padres.
Ah, okay, there you go.
So they're going to knock each other off somehow.
Okay,
that's going to be it's going to be a very, very interesting ending to the season. I just don't want to go into Atlanta if say we're 1 game ahead or even tied and go in 3 games in Atlanta, and then we have to play the Brewers at the end of the season.
So the Brewers is the
we
last
need to
series?
build up. Yeah, they're the last.
And then
one.
but the thing is, the Brewers will be in locked, right? So maybe
Yes.
that will help out. But is
Well,
that
they
in New
might want to
York?
get this, but maybe they
The
no, it's
rotation
away.
set up.
Last
It's
last
away.
six games, last 6 games of the season are away.
Okay.
Not
Well,
easy.
I bet you the Met fans travel to these games, John. There's going to be a lot of Met fans in Atlanta, even in Philly and in Milwaukee. People will make this trip, John, if they're going
Oh,
to the
they'll go.
playoffs.
They'll
So
go.
the Bouk and Zoobie show is very excited, especially John, who religiously watches the Mets, folks. I'm telling you, this guy. I was laughing last night because you had to get torn away from, or you had the two TVs going, I guess, with the Mets and
It's
the
going
Jets
back and
last night.
forth, back and
You're going
forth,
back and forth. Well,
back and forth.
I got the iPad, which Optimum, John, does allow you. If you have an
Yeah.
iPad, you get the app, and I'm telling you, John, the picture is pretty damn impressive.
Oh
You don't
yeah.
mind what you can, and I set it up when I was watching football. I've got the small screen and I got the big screen. So there you go, folks. What a life we have. Maybe we'll see the family once in a while, and here and there,
Well, there is one
check
other
on them.
thing that there is one other thing I want to say about the Mets.
Yes,
Ed Kranepool passed away,
yes,
and
sad to hear.
yeah, I mean he went through the whole trying to get a donation of a kidney. He ended up getting it 5 years ago. He ended up passing away from a heart attack. Clearly,
Hmm.
79 years old.
Yep.
Part of, I mean, if people don't know his story, they signed him right out of high school, right out of high school, and uh, Ed was outspoken at times. I mean, he didn't exactly get along with the Wilpons. I know that at one time he was an ambassador, and he got into I don't know what the argument was over with Jeff Wilpon, and all of a sudden he wasn't an ambassador, so he was missing from the Mets. Listen, anyone that
Right.
argued with the Wilpons were gone the next day. So, I mean, we know that. So,
But
uh,
he was on the original 62 team as a high schooler, right? Wasn't that the
that's
story
correct.
too,
That's
right? He
correct. That's
technically
correct.
and then he was there to what, 79 or 8? What was his last year with the Mets?
1979. 79.
79. So he
Yeah.
played 17 years. He was in the fun era when we were young. We used to go to the Met games and sneak down to the box seats and watch the Mets a lot when they really were bad, folks. And I mean really bad.
And he was a
So,
great pinch hitter, if you remember.
yeah, of
The two
course.
best pinch hitters that we've had were Ed Kranepool and Rusty Staub at the end of
Yeah,
their
well,
careers.
yeah, Rusty was in a class by himself, though. I mean, let's face it. I mean, as good as Kranepool was, Rusty was amazing as a pinch hitter.
Yes,
He
he
could
was.
actually, change the way the other team played the game late in the game to avoid that situation where he would come up. And the same, Ed Kranepool, long career, good guy, like you said, but never. I mean, it would be pretty funny to look if you looked at the numbers, like how many, like he was mostly a platoon type of player, right? I mean, how many full seasons did he play? Not many, right?
No, no. And actually, when Gil Hodges was the manager, he did not like Gil Hodges because he felt like he should have been playing every day. And Gil Hodges liked to platoon players. I mean, we were too young to really remember that, but I had read many times that he did not get along with Gil Hodges at all. And I believe that when it came time, I mean, first he said trade me, they wouldn't trade him. Then when Joe McDonald was the GM, and we know he made some awful trades. That guy. I mean, I remember him trading Rusty Staub for Mickey Lolich, which goes down as one of the worst trades of all time. But Joe McDonald would not negotiate a contract with him. He just kept putzing around, and he, believe it or not, Donald Grant gave him like a 3-year contract. He went above McDonald's head, and McDonald told him, when your contract's up, you will no longer be a Met. And that's exactly what happened. The minute his contract was up, he released him. So Ed Kranepool had his interactions with a lot of the front office people and owners of the Mets. And he was, like I said, I liked him. I liked him. He was an outspoken
Well,
guy. I'm sorry to see him go. Nice, good guy. Good
of
guy.
course, of course. All righty, John. So anything else? I guess we should briefly mention the Yanks, who just keep on kind of same situation, right? Them and the Orioles back and forth, back and forth. I mean, you want to win the division, right?
Yeah. Well, with all the attention that the Yankees have been getting, the Yankees have only won 4 more games than the Mets.
Right. Yeah. I'm
When
still
you
in
look
my
at it, the
91 and a
Mets went
half.
through so much. Yankees have only won 4 more games than them. And I think
Correct.
I kind of jinxed Aaron Judge because I was raving about him. And by the way, I thought at that moment that he had hit 52 home runs. He had hit 51 home runs. So I think I may have jinxed him by saying he hit 52 because he has not hit 52 yet. 2 weeks have gone by. He went cold. He went cold.
So the Bouk and
So
Zoobie kibosh strikes again. Sorry to hear that. Yankee fans don't want to hear it. So I guess, John, before we thank everybody, I just we should probably throw our predictions out there for the Jets next week. I mean, what do we got to lose? Jets Titans. What do you think?
well, I think that the Jets will win this game. I really didn't think that they were going to beat San Francisco. I was hoping they would, but there's a difference between hoping and having a more definitive feeling. They're going to win this week.
I agree, John. And if they don't, the Bouk and Zuby show will be something to watch next week. And we will be back. We're going to be doing Monday night shows when the Jets are playing Sunday. So next week we'll do Monday, post Tuesday. We're posting this tomorrow, so hopefully people check it out. And like I said, please subscribe, like, drives the algo. We're a word of mouth show, and if you're enjoying the content, tell your friends.
Yeah, and please give us feedback. Give us your predictions. If you're watching this, just go on YouTube and give us your predictions. We'd love
Sure,
to
and
see
give
it.
absolutely on any sport, anything you want. If there's a topic you want to talk about, leave it on the mentions, and we'll definitely do it. So, John, who do you got to thank?
Again, thanks to our producer, Zach Zubulake, and to our loyal listeners. Keep the feedback coming. We love to see it. Also, thanks to our community partners, Ronald McDonald House, Kids in Seats, and the Jackie Robinson Foundation. See you next week.